Aiden barely believed in his own decision. Amid the daily struggle to support his son, he had nothing left to offer but his own hope. And at that moment, hope was hanging by a thread. The money in his pocket was not enough to cover the bills. Yet, upon seeing the elderly man in front of him, lost and embarrassed for not being able to find his wallet, Aiden did the unthinkable. He paid for the man's fare with the little he had, sacrificing his own job opportunity. What Aiden didn't know was that this simple act of kindness was about to trigger a series of events that would change his life forever. Days later, his phone rang, bringing news that would leave him completely shaken. He lost everything to help a stranger, but destiny had a surprising plan. Aiden woke up earlier than usual. The old wall clock marked just past 5 in the morning, and the soft light of dawn barely filtered through the worn curtains of the living room. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of thoughts that had kept him awake the night before. His stomach growled, but he ignored it. There was something more important on his mind: the job interview. For weeks, he had been desperately searching for an opportunity, anything that could bring a little stability to his life and that of Owen, his quince-year-old son. Since his wife had left them, the responsibilities of being both father and mother had completely fallen on his shoulders, and the pressure was becoming unbearable with each passing day. As he took a quick sip of coffee, Aiden heard the sound of the alarm clock in Owen's room. The boy had grown up too fast, forced by circumstances to mature before his time. Aiden couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt every time he looked at his son, but he knew that everything he did was for him. It was the only thing keeping him standing. Aiden grabbed the only tie he owned, carefully kept at the bottom of the closet, and adjusted it around the collar of his already worn shirt. It wasn't the ideal outfit for an interview, but it was the best he had. He took one last look at himself in the cracked mirror of the living room, trying to ignore how tired and defeated his reflection looked. When he left the house, he left a note for Owen, saying he would be back before the end of the afternoon and asking him not to worry. Deep down, Aiden knew his son understood the gravity of the situation, but he needed to keep some hope alive, no matter how small. The walk to the bus stop was quick, but Aiden's mind continued to swirl with thoughts. He needed that job. He knew it was his last chance before the mounting bills began to consume everything. When the bus finally approached, Aiden prepared to board, but something unexpected caught his attention. An elderly man, visibly nervous, was frantically rummaging through his pockets, searching for something. Aiden watched for a moment before approaching. "What's wrong?" he asked, seeing the desperation in the man's eyes. "My wallet." "I can't find it," the old man replied, his voice trembling. Aiden looked at the money he had in his pocket. He knew it would barely cover the basic expenses until the end of the month. Still, without thinking twice, he extended his hand with the money to the driver. "I'll pay for his fare," he said with a half-smile. The elderly man tried to refuse, but Aiden insisted. "It's going to be okay," he said, trying to convince himself as much as the man. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes." That decision cost Aiden more than he imagined. As the bus departed, safely taking the elderly man away, Aiden stood at the stop, watching the hours pass. He knew he had missed the interview. The weight of frustration crashed down on his shoulders with crushing force. The sacrifice, noble as it was, now felt like a colossal mistake. With no other option, Aiden walked back home, each step heavier than the last. When he arrived, Owen was already in the living room, his eyes filled with worry. "Dad, how did it go?" the boy asked, trying to mask the fear in his voice. Aiden swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "It didn't work out, son, but we'll find another opportunity." Owen nodded, but Aiden saw the discouragement in his son's eyes. It broke him inside, more than any defeat he had ever suffered. Trying to remain calm, he spent the rest of the day searching for other opportunities, but the relentless reality left no room for optimism. With each hour that passed, the pressure increased, and hope slowly faded away. But then, days later, the unexpected happened. The phone rang, and the voice on the other end brought a surprise that Aidan could never have predicted. The same elderly man, Charles, whom he had helped, was now calling him for a meeting, and what he had to say would leave Aidan in shock. Aidan remained with the phone in his hand, still processing what he had just heard. Charles, the elderly man he had helped at the bus stop, had asked him to meet him at a cafe on the other side of town. Charles's voice sounded friendly, but there was something more, a subtle urgency that made Aidan's heart race. He wasn't sure what to expect, but something in his instinct told him he should go. "Who was it?" Owen asked, noticing the confused expression on his father's face. "It was the man I helped at the bus stop a few days ago. He wants to meet me today," Aidan replied, still somewhat dazed. Owen frowned. "Does he want to pay you back?" "Maybe," Aidan said, although he felt there was more to the story. "I'll find out soon." Aidan gave Owen a quick kiss on the forehead and left for the cafe Charles had indicated. As he walked, his mind oscillated between hope and apprehension. He couldn't understand why Charles, a man he barely knew, was so interested in seeing him again. When he arrived at the cafe, Aidan saw Charles sitting at a table by the window, staring outside with a thoughtful expression. The elderly man seemed even more elegant than before, wearing a sharp suit. Aidan hesitated for a moment before approaching. "Charles," he called, pulling out a chair to sit down. Charles turned, smiling warmly. "Aidan, I'm so glad you came. I've been waiting for you." "I didn't know what to expect when you called," Aidan said, trying to hide his nervousness. "But here I am." Charles nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "Aidan, I don't know if you realize how much that small act of kindness meant to me. The truth is, you helped me at a time when I desperately needed proof that there is still goodness in this world." Aidan looked at him, confused. "I'm glad I could help, but it was nothing. Anyone would have done the same." Charles chuckled softly. "Ah, you're mistaken, my young friend. Not everyone would do what you did, especially considering the struggles you're facing." Aidan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I just did what I thought was right." "It was more than that," Charles insisted. He paused, as if weighing his next words. "Aidan, I'm not just an elderly man who forgot his wallet at home. I own several businesses and have more resources than I could ever spend in a lifetime. But there's something that money can't buy, and that's trust in people." Aidan blinked, unsure of what to say. This was becoming much bigger than he had imagined. "That's why I want to do something for you," Charles continued. "You missed a job opportunity by helping me, and that's something I can't ignore. I want to offer you a job." Aidan's eyes widened. "A job? How?" "I want you to be my personal driver. And more than that, I'd like you and your son to come live with me in my house. I have a mansion that's too big for me, and I could use the company." The proposal was so surreal that Aidan took a few seconds to process it. "I don't know what to say. This is much more than I could have imagined." Charles smiled again, this time with a sparkle in his eyes that Aidan hadn't noticed before. "Don't worry about it right now. I just want you to consider it. I'm offering this because I believe you're the kind of person I want by my side." Aidan's mind was racing. He knew this was a unique opportunity, something that could completely change his life and Owen's. But he also knew that accepting it would mean leaving everything he knew behind. The thought of living in a mansion, working for a man he barely knew, was both frightening and exhilarating. "I need some time to think," Aidan said, still trying to absorb everything. "Of course," Charles replied, unhurried. "Take your time, but know that my offer is sincere and stands. I truly believe you deserve this." Aiden left the cafe in a state of shock. He walked back home, Charles's words echoing in his mind. It felt as if everything was happening in slow motion, and he wondered if he was dreaming. When he got home, Owen was waiting for him, anxious for news. So, what did he want? Aiden sat down next to his son, trying to find the right words. He offered me a job and a house for both of us. Owen looked at his father, surprised. What? How so? He wants me to be his personal driver, and he offered for us to live in his house. He's very rich, son, and it seems he really wants to help us. Owen was silent for a moment, trying to process the information. That's good, right? I mean, it's a chance, right? Aiden smiled, feeling a pang of hope. Yes, son, it's a chance. A chance we might not be able to miss. In the days that followed, Aiden reflected a lot on Charles's proposal. He talked extensively with Owen, who, despite being hesitant, seemed willing to try something new. And finally, with his heart full of expectations and a pinch of fear of the unknown, Aiden decided to accept. They moved into Charles's mansion the following week. The house was even more grandiose than Aiden had imagined, with expansive gardens and rooms that looked like they came out of a movie. Owen was amazed, exploring every corner of the house while Aiden tried to adjust to the new reality. But soon Aiden realized that, despite all the luxury, life in the mansion would bring its own challenges. And the first of these came in the form of Emily, Charles's granddaughter, whom he recognized as soon as he saw her. "Emily?" he asked, surprised to find her in the hallway of the house. "Aiden?" she replied, with a surprised smile on her lips. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," he said, still trying to understand the coincidence. "My grandfather asked me to stay here for a while," she explained. "But are you working for him?" "Yes, I am," Aiden replied, unsure of how this would affect their dynamic. Before they could say anything more, Logan, Emily's fiancé, appeared at the door, casting a suspicious glance at Aiden. He didn't like the closeness between the two at all, and the discomfort was palpable from the very first moment. In the following days, Aiden tried hard to focus on his new job, but the tension between him and Logan only grew. Small disagreements began to arise, and it soon became clear that Logan saw Aiden as a threat, especially when he realized that Emily and Aiden seemed to share a friendship that went beyond work. It was during a dinner that the tension reached its peak. Aiden noticed that something was wrong when he caught Logan's furtive glance. Later that night, he was called into Charles's office, where he found the elderly man sitting with a serious expression on his face. "Aiden, I need you to see something," Charles said, pointing to a monitor screen. Aiden approached and saw the images from the house's security cameras. To his surprise, he saw Logan placing something in Aiden's room before leaving hastily. Charles looked at him with a grave expression. "I didn't want to believe it, but Logan tried to frame you, Aiden. He put an expensive piece of jewelry in your room, probably to accuse you of theft." Aiden felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He knew Logan saw him as a threat, but he never imagined he would be capable of something so low. Fear mingled with anger as he processed the situation. "I will deal with this," Charles said firmly. "Logan will answer for his actions. And as for you, Aiden, I want you to know that I trust you. Don't let this get to you." Aiden left the office feeling both relieved and worried. Charles had defended him, but the atmosphere in the mansion only worsened. Logan would be expelled, but the consequences of it all were still uncertain. As he walked through the hallways of the house, Aiden knew this was only the beginning of a new series of challenges. The weight of expectations, the tensions that grew each day, and the increasingly close relationship with Emily made him feel like he was navigating dangerous waters. The tension in the mansion became palpable after the incident with Logan. Although he had been expelled from the house, the shadow of his actions still loomed over everyone. Aiden continued his work as a driver, trying to focus on what mattered, providing a better life for Owen and adapting to the new environment. However, he could not ignore the growing bond that was forming between him and Emily. Days passed, and as Aiden and Emily grew closer, he couldn't help but feel confused. Emily was beautiful, intelligent, and kind. But there was something more, a silent connection that brought them closer every day. They shared long and honest conversations, laughing and discovering they had more in common than they had imagined. Aiden, however, could not afford to get distracted. He knew that life in the mansion was like walking a tightrope, and any misstep could be disastrous. One night, after a long conversation on the porch, Emily looked into Aiden's eyes, the silence heavy with a tension they had yet to face. "Aiden, there's something I want to tell you," she began hesitantly. "Say it, Emily. You know you can talk to me about anything," he replied, trying to hide the worry growing in his chest. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she admitted, her voice trembling but firm. "And I know this is complicated, especially after everything that happened with Logan. But I can't hide it anymore." Aiden fell silent for a moment, absorbing the declaration. He knew there was something growing between them, but hearing those words out loud brought a weight he didn't expect. "Emily, I feel something for you too," he confessed, finally. "But you know it's not that simple. There's a lot at stake here. I don't want you to get hurt, and I don't want to jeopardize what we have right now." Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know, Aiden, but I can't pretend these feelings don't exist. I want to be by your side, whatever it may be." Aiden sighed, looking at the horizon. He wanted so much to believe that they could simply follow their hearts, but reality was relentless. "I just want you to be sure, Emily. I don't want you to end up regretting it." Emily stepped closer, holding his hand. "I won't regret it, Aiden. The only thing I would regret is not living what I feel." That night, the future seemed full of possibilities, but also uncertainties. They knew they were about to face a new series of challenges, but whatever came, they would be together. The days that followed were intense. The relationship between Aiden and Emily continued to develop, but the atmosphere in the mansion was far from peaceful. Even though Charles supported their relationship, there were glances and whispers among the staff, and Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was on the horizon. And then, as if fate was determined to test Aiden's newfound happiness, Nora appeared. She showed up at the mansion unannounced, the same woman Aiden hadn't seen in years, since she abandoned him and Owen. The shock was immediate, both for Aiden and for Owen, who stood petrified at the sight of their mother at the door. "Nora!" Aiden exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, a smile Aiden knew well, full of hidden intentions. "I came to take back what is rightfully mine. I came to take my son." Owen recoiled, his face pale. "What?" Aiden immediately positioned himself between them, anger rising in his chest. "You left us, Nora. You abandoned your son. Now you want to come back as if nothing happened?" "Don't be dramatic, Aiden. I was just confused at the time. Now I want to make things right. Owen is my son, and I have the right to be with him," she said, with a coldness that made Aiden's blood boil. "You lost that right when you left us," he retorted, trying to stay calm for Owen's sake. "You can't just come back and expect everything to be fine. This isn't your choice, Aiden. I will fight for this in court, and believe me, I will win. You can barely take care of him. I, on the other hand, can give him everything he needs," Nora replied with a disdainful tone. Owen, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. "I'm not going with you, Nora. You left me. Dad took care of me alone, and I won't forgive you for that." Owen's declaration hit Nora like a blow, but she quickly regained her composure. "That's not your decision, kid. I'm your mother. and I will do what's best for you." Aiden felt his heart clench. He knew Nora wasn't there for Owen. She was there because she knew he had improved his life and wanted a part of it. And now, she was willing to use their son to get what she wanted. In the following days, Nora followed through on her threat and initiated a legal battle for custody of Owen. Aiden found himself trapped in a legal struggle he didn't want, but he knew he could not avoid it. He wouldn't let Nora take Owen away from him, not after everything they had been through together. Emily became his support during this time, but even with the comfort she offered, Aiden couldn't shake the fear. The possibility of losing Owen consumed him, and he knew Nora would do anything to win. The hearing came faster than Aiden expected. The courtroom was full, and he felt the pressure of the situation like a mountain on his shoulders. Nora was there, wearing a self-assured smile, as her lawyer presented a strong case, focused on the financial and emotional instability Aiden had faced in recent years. When it was Aiden's turn to speak, he stood up, Owen by his side. "Your Honor," he began, his voice firm but laden with emotion. "I am the only father Owen has had in recent years. I was there for him when no one else was. I did my best, even when everything seemed lost. Nora may have money now, but she wasn't there when he needed her. I was. I will not lose my son now, after everything we've been through." The silence in the courtroom was absolute as Aiden spoke. Owen looked at him with pride, knowing every word from his father was true. When Nora tried to interrupt, the judge silenced her with a gesture, focusing his attention on Aiden. Aiden continued, his voice choked. "The decision about Owen's custody is not about money or material comfort. It's about love, commitment, and sacrifice. I love my son more than anything in this world, and he is the reason I keep fighting every single day. I ask you to consider what is best for Owen, not just what seems most convenient." The judge looked at Nora, who shrank under the weight of his critical gaze. "What concerns me," the judge said, "is that Ms. Nora seems more interested in claiming rights than in caring for her child. The evidence shows that Aiden has been the only one consistently and lovingly present in Owen's life, and that is what really matters." The verdict was clear. Custody of Owen remained with Aiden. Nora stormed out of the courtroom in fury, while Aiden knelt down to hug Owen, tears streaming down his face. "I would never let them take you away, son. I promise." Emily, who had watched everything in silence, approached them, placing a hand on Aiden's shoulder. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. Aiden looked at her, feeling the weight of the world beginning to lift. "I don't know what I would do without you, Emily." She smiled, her eyes filled with tears. "You will never have to find out." As they left the courthouse together, Aiden realized that despite all the difficulties, he had finally found what he had always been searching for: a family. Not a conventional family, but a family built through love, struggle, and sacrifice. Now, they could finally start anew, knowing they were together, ready to face whatever came next. Time passed, and Aiden, Owen, and Emily began to build a new life together, under the protection and support of Charles. The mansion, which once seemed like just a workplace for Aiden, had now become a true home, where he and Owen could finally breathe easy. The weight Aiden had carried for so long felt lighter now that he had Emily by his side. However, the newly found peace didn't last long. The shadow of Aiden's past loomed over them in an unexpected way. The news that Nora had left town after losing custody of Owen brought temporary relief, but Aiden knew that her chapter in their lives was not entirely closed. One afternoon, while Aiden and Charles were discussing some matters in the office, Owen rushed in, a worried expression on his face. "Dad, there's someone at the door. She said she wants to talk to you," Owen said, clearly nervous. Aiden exchanged a quick glance with Charles before getting up and following Owen to the entrance. When he arrived at the door, Aiden's heart nearly stopped. "You... here?" Aiden could barely hide the surprise in his voice. Nora stood before him, but she didn't look like the confident woman he had faced in court. She appeared haggard, her eyes red and swollen as if she hadn't slept in days. The rigid, arrogant posture he knew so well had vanished. "Can I talk to you?" Nora asked, her voice softer than Aiden had ever heard it. Aiden looked at Owen, who looked clearly uncomfortable, before nodding. "Owen, go inside. I need to talk to your mother." The boy hesitated but obeyed, throwing one last glance at his mother before disappearing through the door. Aiden stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind him, and faced Nora, waiting for her to speak. I know I have no right to ask for anything," Nora began, struggling to keep her voice steady. "But I have nowhere else to go, Aiden. Everything went wrong after the trial. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I have no one to turn to." Aiden crossed his arms, his expression serious. "And what do you want me to do, Nora? After everything you did, after trying to take Owen from me, do you expect me to just help you?" Nora looked down, tears streaming down her face. "I know I was wrong. I was wrong to you. I was wrong to Owen. I know that. But please, Aiden, I have no one else." Aiden felt a mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to slam the door in her face and send her away forever. But another part, a part he had tried to ignore for so long, felt pity. He knew what it was like to be alone, with no one to turn to, and no matter how much she had hurt him, he couldn't simply turn his back. "I can't let you in here, Nora. Not after everything that happened. But I will help you find a place. I'll give you some money so you can start over, but that's it. Owen doesn't need to go through more of this." Nora nodded, visibly relieved. "Thank you, Aiden. I truly appreciate it." Aiden sighed, running a hand through his hair, trying to keep calm. "I'll get the money. Wait here." He went back inside, finding Charles and Owen in the living room. Charles, who had overheard the conversation through the ajar door, gave Aiden a sympathetic look. "She shouldn't be here." "I know, but I can't just leave her on the street," Aiden replied, his voice tired. "You're a good man, Aiden," Charles said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But don't let her take advantage of that." Aiden nodded, taking the amount he had set aside for emergencies and returning to the porch. He handed the money to Nora, who took it with trembling hands, repeatedly thanking him. "This is the most I can do, Nora. Now go and start over, but far from here for Owen's sake." She agreed, shrinking at the sound of his words. "I will. I promise I won't bother you anymore." Nora turned her back, walking slowly until she disappeared down the road. Aiden stood there for a moment, watching until she was completely out of sight, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. He didn't want to see Nora again, but he couldn't help but feel a pang of compassion for what she had become. When he returned inside, he found Owen and Emily together on the sofa, with Charles watching from a distance. The silence between them was heavy, and Aiden knew they were all processing what had just happened. "It's all right now," Aiden said, trying to reassure his son. "She's gone, and she won't be back." Owen nodded, but his face showed that the scars of the past were still present. "I just want us to be okay, Dad." "And we will be," Aiden promised, sitting next to him. "We're in this together, son. Nothing will separate us." Emily took Aiden's hand, gently squeezing it. "You did the right thing. She doesn't deserve anything else from you, but the fact that you helped shows what kind of man you are." Aiden smiled at her, feeling the love and support that Emily always offered. "I just want us to have peace now." Charles, who had been listening in silence, finally spoke. "You have a new life here, and I will do everything I can to protect it. Aiden, you have a family here, a family that you built with sacrifice and love. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Charles's words resonated deeply with Aiden. He knew that no matter how hard it was, life would continue to test his strength and determination. But now, he was no longer alone. He had a family that supported him, friends who cared, and a future that, despite the uncertainties, seemed brighter than ever. As the sun set, painting the sky with golden and orange hues, Aiden looked at his family and felt, for the first time in a long time, that everything would be all right. What had started as a simple act of kindness had transformed their lives in ways he could never have imagined. They were together, and that was all that mattered. The months that followed were like a new dawn in the life of Aiden, Owen, and Emily. The threat of Nora had dissipated, and with it, the constant fear of losing what they had built. Aiden now focused on his work and his new life alongside Emily, while Owen thrived in school, making friends and looking forward to a promising future. But, as in every journey, challenges never completely disappear. They merely change form. Charles, who had always been the pillar of strength and wisdom for everyone, began to show signs of fatigue. Aiden noticed the small changes, how Charles breathed more heavily after short walks, the pains he tried to disguise, and the distant look in his eyes, as if he were pondering something important, but didn't want to worry anyone. One night, after a family dinner, Charles called Aiden for a private conversation in his study. Aiden, sensing the seriousness of the invitation, felt a growing unease in his chest, but followed Charles without questioning. They sat in leather armchairs, and for a moment, the silence between them spoke more than any words could say. "I'm not going to be around for much longer, Aiden," Charles began, his voice heavy with a melancholy Aiden had never heard before. "I feel like my days are running out, and there are things I need to set in order before I go." Aiden swallowed hard, trying to remain calm. "Charles, you still have plenty of time. We can find the best doctors, do whatever it takes to make you better." Charles smiled, a sad smile but filled with acceptance. "Aiden, we all have our time in this world, and I feel like mine is coming to an end. But don't worry, I've done my part, and I'm at peace with that. What worries me now is you, Emily, and Owen." Aiden felt a tightness in his chest. "You've been like a father to me, Charles. I don't know what I would do without you." "And you've been like a son to me," Charles replied, his voice choked. "And that's why I need to make sure that you'll be okay when I'm no longer here." Aiden nodded, tears beginning to form in his eyes. "You've done so much for us. I'll never be able to repay you." "You already have, Aiden. The way you care for Owen, how you love Emily, how you dedicated yourself to me and my home. All of this is more than I could ever ask for. But now, I need you to accept what I have to offer." Charles took an envelope from his desk and handed it to Aiden. Inside were legal documents transferring the ownership of the mansion and a considerable part of Charles's businesses to Aiden. "This is for you all. I want you to have the security you've never had before, that Owen has a guaranteed future, and that Emily knows she is safe with someone who loves her and can take care of her." Aiden fell silent, shocked by the magnitude of the gift Charles was offering. "Charles, this is too much. I don't know if I can accept." "You must accept," Charles insisted, with a firmness that left no room for discussion. "This is my last wish, Aiden. Let me do this for you." Aiden finally relented, taking the documents with trembling hands. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Charles. I promise I will honor your trust in me." Charles smiled, a smile full of peace. "I know you will, Aiden, and I know that with you, Emily and Owen will be in good hands." The days that followed were filled with a bittersweet tranquility. Aiden and Emily grew even closer, aware that their time with Charles was limited. They spent afternoons together talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Owen, who always saw Charles as a father figure, refused to believe that the old friend was really leaving. But the inevitable happened. One morning, Charles did not wake up. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep, as if he had simply decided it was time to rest. The pain that fell over the house was profound, but mixed with immense gratitude for everything Charles had done for them. The funeral was simple, yet filled with love and respect. Aidan, Emily, and Owen stood together, finding strength in one another as they said goodbye to the man who had changed their lives forever. After the funeral, life in the mansion took a new direction. Aidan took on his new responsibilities, determined to honor Charles's legacy. Emily stood by his side every step of the way, being the support he had always needed, and Owen, despite his sadness, found solace in the certainty that he was surrounded by a family that loved him. One night, while watching the stars in the mansion's garden, Aidan pulled Emily closer, feeling the warmth of her presence. "I never thought my life would change so much, Emily. It all started with a simple act of kindness, and look where we are now." Emily smiled, snuggling into his chest. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? But I think Charles knew exactly what he was doing when he brought us together." Aidan kissed the top of her head, feeling his heart filled with a peace he hadn't known in a long time. "He gave us a gift, Emily. He gave us the chance to be happy, to have a family." She lifted her face to look into Aidan's eyes, hers shimmering with the tears that refused to fall. "And I am eternally grateful for that. And for you, Aidan." They kissed under the starry sky, knowing that despite all the challenges, they had found something rare and precious: true love, the family they had always desired, and a future full of possibilities. With Charles watching from somewhere, they moved forward, ready to face whatever life had in store for them, knowing that together they could overcome anything. The simple act of kindness Aidan had performed at the beginning had led them to this moment, and he knew that in some way Charles would always be present, guiding and protecting them as he always had. And so they continued their journey, no longer alone, but as a family, united by love, gratitude, and the memory of a man who changed their lives forever. The days following Charles's funeral were marked by a mix of sadness and hope. Aidan, Emily, and Owen dedicated themselves to keeping alive the memory of the man who had transformed their lives so profoundly. The mansion, which once seemed large and empty, was now filled with love, care, and purpose. Aidan, now responsible for Charles's business, worked hard to honor the legacy he had been entrusted with. He dedicated himself to learning every detail, relying on Emily's help, who was well-versed in the operations and stood by him in every important decision. Together, they formed an unbeatable team, strengthening not only the company, but also the life they were building. Owen, in turn, flourished like never before. With the security and support of Aidan and Emily, he found his way in school, showing a special talent for the arts. Aidan took pride in seeing his son grow and develop, knowing that he had finally managed to give him the life he always wanted. One night, after a long day of work, Aidan, Emily, and Owen gathered in the garden of the mansion. The stars shone brightly in the sky, and the gentle breeze brought with it a feeling of peace. It was the kind of night that Aidan had never imagined before all of this began. A calm night, surrounded by the people he loved. "I think Charles would be proud to see how things are now," Emily said, breaking the silence while holding Aidan's hand. "He always believed in us, even when I didn't believe in myself," Aidan replied with a nostalgic smile. "And that's why I will do everything in my power to honor what he gave us." Owen, sitting beside them, looked at his father and Emily with a shy smile. "I wish I could tell him how grateful I am. He was like a grandfather to me." "He knew, Owen," Emily said gently. "He knew how much he meant to all of us." Aidan looked at his son, feeling a wave of pride and love. "The important thing is that we are together now. We are a family, and Charles will always be with us, in some way." As they stood there, enveloped in the tranquility of the night, Aiden allowed himself to reflect on the journey that had brought them to that moment. From the sacrifice he made at the bus stop, to the decision to trust Charles, and finally, to building a new life alongside Emily and Owen, everything seemed to have a greater purpose, something he would never have understood at the beginning. "Have you guys thought about taking a trip together?" Owen suddenly asked, his eyes shining with the idea. "I think it would be good for all of us. A new adventure." Aiden and Emily exchanged glances, both smiling at the suggestion. "I think it's an excellent idea, Owen," Aiden said. "We deserve a new adventure, something to celebrate everything we've accomplished." "We can think of some special place, something that Charles would have liked too," Emily added, stroking Aiden's arm. "Let's make it happen," Aiden said, determined. "A trip to mark the beginning of this new phase of our lives." With that decision, they began to plan a journey that would not only symbolize the overcoming of the challenges they had faced, but also the beginning of a new story, a story written by them with love, courage, and the legacy of Charles always present in their hearts. And so, as the night progressed and the stars continued to shine, Aiden, Emily, and Owen grew even closer, ready for whatever the future held for them. They knew that life wouldn't always be easy, but they were prepared to face anything together. After all, it was kindness, sacrifice, and love that had brought them to this point, and these would be the same forces that would continue to guide them on their new journey. With one last look at the stars, Aiden felt a profound peace. He finally had everything he had always wanted: a family, a home, and the certainty that the future was full of possibilities. And with that, he was ready to move forward, knowing that the best was yet to come. We hope you enjoyed this emotional story. If you did, please give us a like to help the channel grow. Don't miss any of our amazing stories. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We want to hear from you. Share your stories, suggestions, and feedback in the comments. Together, we will continue to create content that touches the heart.